revival out. Duh. So revival means hard work. And a church that we knew in South Africa, in Argentina, they had 7 services a day, 7 days a week, 250,000 people attending the church, but they burnt out all their leadership in the first 2 years. And their worship team, even worse. I mean, 7 services a day? Julian, you're going to have some serious organizing to do if you're not going to be singing with a croaky voice every single day. But when we start thinking about this, one of the biggest issues is that to grow the church, when it's growing like this, is your doorway. You see, it's easy for people to come in when it's small and you can be connected. But the bigger it becomes, the harder, because there's no connections. And this is where we start to shift really how we operate. And the invitation versus the walk-in, see, we can do all the promotion. People start seeing our information, start seeing what's happening, and it feels harder because you look at this wall of people. How do you feel? How do you remember when you first came in here? How intimidating was, what is this? You know, it was all black, for those of us who remember. But trying to find 1 or 2 people that would actually connect with you is probably the reason you're here. And that's actually, if you can create 10 links or 10 friendships in those first 2 visits, you've probably got the person to stay, irrespective of how good the pastors are. This is the hard thing for us as pastors and leaders, is it doesn't matter how good we are at preaching, if people don't connect with the people around them, they walk out the door. And that is hard, because we are preaching, we are praying, we're interceding, we're doing miracles. I mean, the Lord is, okay. But I mean is, we're working with the Lord, yeah? Okay, I'm not talking about how good we are, but we're doing everything as leaders to do it. If the church doesn't do the connection and the embracing, then everything that we worked for is being lost. And our back door will be as wide as our front door. Okay? And so as we start to think about this, the newcomer must get us into a group quickly. Now, we've got a great assimilation system, and Claire will talk about that. But at 70 plus, you don't just need greeters on the door, you need introducers. Now, an introducer, Fiona's great at this. She hears someone is in the Keys, she will connect them with someone who either lives in their block, works in the same business, or has connections that will help them. She's one of those people, and that's why we love you, Fiona, okay? Because that's what an introducer doesn't just say, I know, but I'm bigging her up. And she's not the only one, okay? But by making people know who they can connect with, who the friends are, actually taking time, not just wanting their phone number. You see, you can be on the welcome team and you go, oh, here, let me take your phone number, let me take your things. And it's like, you really don't care about them. But if you have connected them with 4 other people, they're going to give you their phone number. If it's just about the phone number, if it's just this, give me your info, then frankly, they run out the door. Because we would, if that's how we were treated. But when you connect them with people, it's not rocket science. It's almost not spiritual. But it is, because Jesus said, do to others as you would have done to you. So why do we operate like we do in this church? Because that's how we think. We think, how would I want to be treated? And that's how, as we're looking at our teams and we're starting to talk about this, we're not just talking about formal greeters, we're talking about heart for the team. And I'm talking about this in terms of how all of our teams operate. We don't just want skilled musicians, we want worshippers. But we do want skilled musicians. We don't want to put off the skilled musicians. We do want people with great voices, but we want the rest of it as well, don't we? So it's understanding but in a stagnant and declining church, greeters thinks their job is to welcome members. In a growing church, you understand your job is the new people. The welcome. So don't get caught up with greeting all the people you already know. Give them a quick, hey, sorry, you know what I mean? I'll talk to you later. Hey, here's the new person. And what I love in this church is the bags and the system. They're all designed so that those who know can spot the newcomer, but the newcomer doesn't have to stand up and go, hey, I'm new. I really don't want to do this. Why are you doing it? We don't do that here. We don't embarrass new people. We do what's sensible and normal. So introducers actually are connection people, aren't they? And that's the rule of 7. You've heard that about you can connect anybody in the world through 7 relationships. I don't know how many of you have actually tried to work that one out, but apparently you can connect pretty much anybody anywhere in the world through just 7 relationships. Wow. But the point is there's connections somewhere. That's what we're seeing. We're believing the Lord for. So if God hasn't given us introducers, then we need to pray for those people because they're a critical part of us getting larger. Because getting larger requires adjustment. Okay? If you want bigger muscles, you've got to do a few exercises, but then you need to change your shirt or whatever. Okay, so I want to just quickly move on this because it's going to affect the building of our ministry teams. And this is what we're really crunching into. Staff, this is American-based training, so let's just call it team. Because our staff, only half of our staff get paid, and only half of them get paid full-time. No, not even half, less than half of them. Pretty much our entire team of this church are part-timers. Pastor Mark and Simone are the few that actually, Simone she's only part-time, supposedly. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? When we think about this and we're thinking about the key things, we want to look at how a church operates. This has got 3 legs. It's nice and stable, this table. And worship, teaching, and children's ministry are absolutely critical for a church's health. Yeah? Everything else, the outreach, is why we do it. Okay? But this is stable. One of those missing, and you've got a problem. You need to understand is each of the different systems in this church, any one of them missing, and there's 8 systems, actually brings the whole thing down or brings an imbalance. And we want to talk a little about this because I'm going to look at this from reaching 200. A church going from 50 to 200. I know we're beyond that, but I don't know where Mount Chapel's at, and I don't know where this teaching's going to go. But it's just a quick intro. For a church to reach 200, the pastor needs to spend 1/3 to 1/2 of his time on new member recruitment. Wow. Think about this. Because if half of his time is on the evangelism and the collecting of new people, and only half of it is on the maintaining, he's got a right balance, or she. That means others have got to do the work of filling in, okay? And But it also gets the 80-20 rule kicking in very quickly. You've heard about this, the Pareto. That's an Italian guy that came up with this. Because what he realized is that 80% of Italy's wealth was owned by 20% of the people. But 80% of the work was also owned by 20% of the people, or done by 20% of the people. And that's the reality. So if you want to grow a church of 200 people, you're going to need 40 leaders using the 80-20 rule. But that 40 leaders is going to need, because that's 160 followers and 40 leaders, that's using the 80-20. For every 40 leaders, you're going to need 10 leaders of leaders. And for every 10 leaders, you're going to at least lead 2 leaders of leaders. And that's likely you, Pastors Mark and Simone. And it's about multiplying. Okay? So if you start to think about that, you're going to need 40 level 1 leaders, 10 level 2 leaders, and 2 level 3 level. You're talking a lot of people to be leaders, and that's what we love about this church. There's so many people come into the church, they do partnership, they find their place quickly, and we're going to talk about shape profile a little bit later on. But it really affects, and once the church hits the 200 mark, you're going to start to need a lot more than that. So if we're going to already be over that, which is what we are, 500 adults attending this church. So do the maths. We're not there yet. Have a look around this room. The leadership day, the leadership training day. If we do the quick count, I don't think we can actually reach beyond 200. Sustaining. Now, there's obviously a few missing, there always will be, and they'll listen to the recording. But just think about that. That's why it's critical for you to raise an assistant tomorrow. Not optional, you must lead someone else into leadership. Okay? And you must help them become better than you so that you can be released and get something else. Bigger, better, different. For us as a church, this isn't optional. Otherwise, all the growth of this last year will be lost. Team, please. I'm not trying to speak negatively about the church. I'm talking about the demands that creates on us. Claire and I understood that if we tried to do everything that we were trying to do in the future and remain the pastors, we would undermine the church that we had grown from the start. And Matt and Julia had grown, the two of us. We would cause problems for the future of this church. So we had to raise up leaders. It wasn't an option, and that cost us, but it actually has promoted us. Okay? So, but as we think about this 80-20 rule works for how the capacity of the room works. Just think about this. Capacity strategies, the capacity of the number of chairs is set by that 80-20 rule as well. Less than 40% feels really bad. So we've set out the chairs around tables, and it doesn't matter how big the rest of it is, because the tables are full-ish. There's 2-3 chairs available each. Someone could come and sit in these, just about. But if it was 2 people here, 2 people there, it would feel horrible, wouldn't it? We want to sit with people, but we want some space. And so that comfortably empty, 60 is maximum, comfortably full. Matt Beamer really doesn't agree that 80% is, he thinks that's too full. and you're going to have a problem. He doesn't actually think you ever hit 80. And I'm sort of unsure on that one. But I think he's probably more right than I am on that one, okay? But the church stops growing at 80%. Once there's 80% of the seats full, the church will not grow. You either have to do something, double service, or plant a church, or do something. But the church is going to stop growing, okay? Now, these are strategies that don't sound very spiritual, do they? But if we're not actually doing what the Lord's asked us, then we're not actually planning for the harvest that he's told us. Okay? And for me, this is a big part of us as we think about doubling. And obviously, we've already started the second service. And there's good things about it because it's releasing some of our young leaders, getting them experienced. It's giving space. But it means double things happening on Sundays. But that's what church used to be. You used to be at church all day. You do the morning and you did the afternoon and you did the evening. Somehow we've gotten out of that. But what I mean is, it means cost. Vision always requires cost. But Jesus, for the vision laid before him, endured the cross. He saw the harvest. He saw you and me, and therefore he paid the cost. There are people here that you may have to adjust your plans, and you may need to talk to people that you're trying to raise into leadership, where they start talking about how busy they are, and you need to actually talk to them about the plan the Lord has to prosper them, not to harm them. That the things that the Lord's asking and the sacrifices, you need to show them the vision of how it's going to work, how their lives are going to be changed. So that means you're going to have to think about not just what Pastor Mark and Simone are doing, but how has the Lord benefited you as you stepped into things in this church? Well, how has that made your family better? How has that made your marriage better? How has that made your friendships better? Because not everybody's married, okay? But, there are other things. You need to communicate that as part of the why someone will come into leadership. The benefits are not just sacrifices. Yeah? Because of the joy Jesus saw, he endured the cross. And leadership costs. But I tell you, Claire and I have loved being your pastors. It's the only thing I'm still jealous of. Okay? I love being the pastor of the church, okay? You guys matter to us. It has been a joy to see your kids grow up, baptized, now in ministry. Some of them do. It is fun. It's an adventure, not just work. But we need to communicate that all the time. Otherwise, the rota, this and that, it doesn't suit. It always costs. We need to really get into that. So now, I just want to mention that because churches grow differently from the way you think. Churches don't grow in a line, nice and comfortably, where you're just ready. What happens is it's like a step. It's like you're going along, and then it's like, 50. What? How did we suddenly? 100. And it grows in chunks. And what happens, and this we have known in this church, because we had this simulation system not really working. And in one 6-month period, 26 first-time guests came through this church, and none of us knew where they were or what had happened to them, because I was asking like crazy. Claire put a new system in, because we were working all of these things through, and the next 6 months, 46 first-time guests came through our church, and 23 of them joined the church. because we knew how systems worked. Now, some of them were first-time guests, or guests of guests, sorry, guests of people. But we knew exactly where all those people were. The following year, 128 first-time guests. Just sorting one system and a plan to actually connect with people quickly and efficiently brought tremendous growth. Now, that has kept going. This is why we're talking about these things. It sounds not particularly spiritual. It is completely spiritual, because when you are faithful with the small, God will give you more. It's a spiritual principle. That's why the whole of this thing's about spiritual principle. And I just want to finish with the last 5 minutes. Leadership development lies at the heart. It's one of the principles that we have here. Number 7, leadership development is at the heart of every church's mission. And the greatest, most important leadership quality to develop is spiritual maturity. And we talk about this in 3 ways. One, your personality. God knew you before you were born. He knew your character, your inclinations, whether you were a logical person or an arty person, whether you were introvert or extrovert. He knew you before you were born. We read that in Jeremiah 1, verse 4 or 5 or something. Before you were born, I knew you. So God called him knowing who he was, his personality, his likes. That's kind of the hardwired part of you that, at the end of the day, even as you grow in knowledge and experience, your character expands, but your desires don't really change in terms of arty versus sporty, those kind of things, okay? But you still can grow your personality because you get to know yourself. The second one is your skills, your abilities. Your abilities, that comes from a variety of places, from formal learning, informal, the culture you grow up in, the church, the friendships, your family, all of that can, as well as the formal training at school, college, or a course like this that helps you start to think about specific things, okay? So your abilities are something that grow. None of us were leaders because the Lord just went that. We grew into leadership. Leadership is something you grow into, you develop. None of us are born leaders. We have to grow. Even those who have leadership personality traits still have to grow. Do you follow what I mean? Because there are many that they think they're leaders and they try to be, and they do it all the wrong way because they've not got any skills. And of course, the third one is maturity, spiritual maturity. And the spiritual maturity is your walk with the Lord. And the walk with the Lord is not just, am I a Christian, am I doing the right things, but actually is the development of your personality and your skills and your hearing from the Lord in a way that makes you a balanced person, a well-developed person, someone that people like being around, because otherwise it can lead to frustration if you don't have certain skills, or it can lead to ineffectiveness if you don't have other ones, and it can lead to moral failure if you don't have other things in place. Okay, there's 3 key, I'm not going to go into the teaching now, but leadership development is such a critical part. That's why Mark and Simone are really focusing the church so much on this, because we've been banging on it. It was already in their hearts, but they've got this plan, because where those 3 coincide, that's effective spiritual leadership. Okay, and where you've got the prayer, you've got the personality, and you've got the training working together, that's where you've got the sweet spot. Otherwise, we lose the very thing we're trying to develop, which is people. It doesn't matter how big this church is physically, it matters that people are getting their lives changed. That's the true treasure. That's the real treasure. It's not the pounds. It's not the buildings. It's not even the numbers. Although numbers matter to the Lord. He wrote a book about them in the Bible. Some numbers matter to the Lord. Okay, but those books of numbers are full of names, individuals who the Lord had things to say about. And that's what this is all about. There are people, and it's critical that you're praying into who those people are. Claire and I, in the early days, I'm just going to finish with this last story. We had, Claire was always doing the children's ministry, and she was never preaching, and never really being alongside me in the way that she needed to be. And we had a couple of people that didn't want to do the children's ministry. They stepped down, and Claire was doing it again. And I prayed, and the Lord gave me 3 names, 3 unlikely names. There weren't people that I thought about, but the Lord told me that just as I'd grown Mark as a worship leader, I should grow these people as children's leaders through Claire. When we asked, all 3 of them said yes. 2 of them got married later on and have had 3 kids, and miracles have happened. But the other one also went on to really being blessed. There are people are waiting for you to pray through them being on your teams, and are going to be extraordinarily blessed if you ask them. So that's where I'm going to finish and hand over to Claire so that she can take us on to the next session. 5 minutes. Okay, 5-minute break. Hooray! Because I'm not trying to teach the entire thing.
Just so then I've got it in my notes.
Issues as your church continues to grow. To be honest, the whole session's about hiring and firing team, and I thought that's much more appropriate to talk with you than actually talk to it here. So that would be an extra one, because it talks about venue hires and best, so you're welcome to look at these notes.
To be honest, when I was reading I'm going to keep it a pretty tight 5 minutes.
We did start quarter of an hour late.
No, and I've reworked the timing.
Yeah.
So that the timing, so the only thing I've potentially knocked off